Hello, everyone. Just to remind you that this is a recorded event. So this is our final for 2022. This is the final in our series for 2022 for CPD and 43. This is early stage site design reimagined by Spacemaker. Really interesting conceptual modeling software which has been developed in Europe. So I will obviously hand it straight over to our speakers, who will be able to explain this in much more detail. As usual, if you have any questions, please do add them to the chat box, which will be fielded at the end of the talk during the Q&A session. But without further ado, I'll hand it over to Ed and Daniel, and I will be obviously in the background. So please do, if you have any questions directed towards me, just a message, and I will hand it over to you guys.
Ed, I just want to let you know that it was not yet full screen.
Have you got it, Daniel?
So we see the presentation, but it's not yet full screen. If you click present.
Hi, Ed. If you just bring up the share screen.
Yeah, I've done that.
No, it's to cancel the share screen. So if you just bring up the share screen. So it's the button at the top right-hand corner. Yeah.
I've pressed that. Yeah.
And then share screen, window, or tab.
Yeah, I've only got the option of screen or window, so I'll go window.
Exactly. And then choose the specific window. There we go. So now that's shared. And then now if you just pause a moment, there should be, I believe the button is on the top next to redo, which should allow you to go into screen share, full screen mode. The one with the play button and the square. Or on bottom left as well. I can see two different places where it shows it. So that almost looks like it's a presentation board. So if you go down, yeah, keep going down, next to the zoom, the button right next to zoom. You see that?
No, I don't see that at all.
So if you go to the zoom one, where you have zoom set at the 79% on the bottom right corner, it's the logo immediately after that. Yes, that one.
Doesn't seem to be working. If we, it'll be fine with this, I think. If you just put that on the screen and just work your way through these, that should be perfectly fine, I think.
Okay.
Here we go.
It's
full screen now. Yeah.
So thanks for inviting us to talk about Spacemaker today. My name's Ed Briggs, and I've been running the launch of Spacemaker into the UK and Ireland since February. Prior to this, I spent the past 9 years in Autodesk looking after the relationship with the UK's top 50 architects. I was excited because I recognise that Spacemaker is not just another Revit +1 tool, but signals a whole new approach to design with sustainability as the key driver and outcome. So please remember to put your questions in chat. We usually make this very interactive, but in the interests of time, let's put our questions there, and we promise we'll come back with any that aren't answered as we go through the demo. So Spacemaker originated as a startup in Oslo in 2016, focusing initially in the Nordics and specifically Oslo. Oslo had problems with high population growth, high density urban planning needs on scarce plots of land, against a backdrop of some of the tightest planning regulations in the world when it comes in particular to noise pollution and sunlight. Much of Spacemaker's value in those early days was seen as being in our generative design capability for optimizing plots and living conditions for residents. It became clear that our generative design options did not receive the acclaim or garner the results that users sought based on layouts of buildings and developments. But in fact, it was the sustainability analysis that resonated in all countries. So this is where much of the product development has been focused since. Autodesk acquired Spacemaker in November 2020 to meet customer demand for better early stage design tools. At the same time, this was the first step to take Spacemaker going global and having the ability to scale. Some of you may have seen at Autodesk University recently, Andrew Anagnost, Autodesk's CEO, announced plans for the development of a new AEC cloud platform, Forma, to sit alongside our existing media and entertainment cloud platform, Flow, and design and manufacturing platform known as Fusion. Spacemaker will be the first product on the new Forma cloud platform for AEC customers. So what is Spacemaker? For those that haven't seen it, and you may have been looking online on our website for videos, a cloud-based AI tool that's accessed via our URL, spacemakerai.com, or via Autodesk now, sitting on European Amazon Web Services servers. Being in the cloud means that everybody in a project is always on the latest version of Spacemaker, as product development is rapid and there have been many updates on a daily basis, not just twice a year as you may see from Autodesk products. There's no software to download, and so no conflicts are caused by project stakeholders being on different versions of desktop software, as you may have been accustomed to in previous projects. Spacemaker enables design teams to evaluate potential sites or projects on a collaborative, non-technical platform to optimize the plot. It draws on real-world data sources to build a 3D model of your development area, terrain, and surrounding buildings in a matter of minutes. And this is a process that we know can take at least 1 to 2 days to build manually. You can measure your design's performance as you iterate, and the results update as you amend the design. Spot the red flags around wind tunnels, comfort, daylight, and noise pollution based on artificial intelligence, rapid analysis, and golden standards, and fix the issues at the very earliest opportunity. This is what Autodesk and Spacemaker refer to as outcome-driven design. The tool is positioned at the very earliest stages of the project lifecycle at evaluation and planning, and is predominantly used for capacity and feasibility studies by developers and landowners and architectural practices. Since the acquisition by Autodesk, a lot of the focus has been on integration with the Autodesk design portfolio, particularly Revit, which you'll see shortly in Daniel's demo. We look forward to the new world of Forma building on this integration work. This brings me on to a key appeal of Spacemaker. Not being originally an Autodesk product means it retains fantastic interoperability with a whole range of data sources that you may use, such as ViewCity and other software vendors' tools such as SketchUp, Rhino, and Grasshopper. We recognise the value of the data and insights they contribute to your projects, and you can continue to work with them utilising Spacemaker for its sustainability analysis and the easy route into Autodesk's workflows. As users, you see the automated data that it brings together, and this is from around the globe with many sources. We're always transparent about the sources of data that we aggregate for you, and this saves you a lot of time at the earliest stage. The AI-powered design is rapid analysis in a matter of moments for key sustainability analyses via machine learning and surrogate models. We bring value to you in continuous appraisal and insights as to the performance of your design with real-time analysis and outcome-driven design. The value sits in time savings, reduced risk at the very earliest stage of a project, which we know is where most of the monetary value sits, and improved optimization both to your end clients and to living conditions for future residents. It helps your clients' bottom line. We can analyze and find new residential plots that have views to a landmark or building or waterfront that can actually impact their bottom line. So 3 takeaways really to summarize the value of Spacemaker in my opinion. Improved collaboration between both internal and external stakeholders. So across your practice, encouraging non-technical staff to become involved in the project, to be able to articulate to clients and to planning authorities. The outcome-driven design to monitor the performance of your development and design instantly and to go back and reiterating. And sustainable design. A lot of you are UK based and so tend to align with RIBA's sustainability outcomes, which were consolidated from the UN Sustainability Development Goals. And we believe that Spacemaker helps you deliver against them. And I'll now pass over to Daniel to show how.
Thank you so much, Ed. I will now share my screen, and I will also turn off my camera so I can prioritize the streaming of my screen rather than my beautiful face. I think you might enjoy that as well. Ed, can you just confirm if you can see my screen?
Yeah.
Awesome. So as Ed has explained, Spacemaker is a cloud solution, meaning you just need a browser, laptop, and as soon as you come to our website, you are able to get access to the software. Being cloud, there is only one version of it. So this is our workspace where you can find all the projects that you are working on now and that you have worked on in the past. In order to create a new project, very simple. You just need to type in the plot address, and in a few minutes, Spacemaker will fetch the information around that plot that you need. For the UK, our data vendors are not yet totally integrated, so you'll see a little bit of a variation in terms of data quality. Buildings are coming from OpenStreetMap, terrain is coming from DIFRA. But the good news is that you can just drop in the data that you have, so buildings, terrain, and again, in a question of seconds, you have all the data that you need in order to kick off the project. And that's really important, right? We need a good representation of the surroundings. Otherwise, all the analysis Spacemaker will run won't be correct. But it's extremely simple. So right now we are in London city center, and we are working with a plot that is about 6,400 square meters. Next step is about start populating this plot with different masses. And for that, we will use our explore mode, and we want to make sure that we are running a site study. By the way, we have approached generative design not like a silver bullet that will give you like the most perfect solution and kind of the architecture job, it's all done. That's not really what we are trying to achieve here. Spacemaker is a decision supporting a tool. So we want to empower you to take better decisions and have all the insights that you need to drive your project in an outcome-based way. So our generative design tool, it's all about increasing the solution room so that you can consider as many solutions as possible. And in this first part of the process, I won't be so worried about how the solutions look like. It's more about strategy approach. And I will define now the width of the buildings, the width of the internal streets, what kind of layout types are interesting for me. I also wanted all the solutions to be 8 stories tall. And I will add different solutions into my solution room. Right now we have here 27. And my job now is just readjust them so that all of them have exactly the same area. And you can see that every time we iterate the concept in Spacemaker, we get real-time analysis on the key figures and other metrics. But this is really important, right? So that we can keep an eye over the outcomes that we are producing as we iterate our concept. So what are you seeing right now? 4 different solutions on your screen, and what they have in common is exactly the same area. Why? Again, because I want to be able to compare apples against apples, right? So first thing I will look into is sun. And what you are looking right now is a full sun analysis of every pixel you see on the screen. Just make sure to always check the scale. Of course, dark blue would mean that it's between 0 and 1 hour of sun. Bright yellow means like more than 9 hours of sun. And we can just see very clearly that concept A and concept B are the ones that have the best sun conditions in the outdoor area. Okay, this is to keep, we need to take note of this. A and B that did a really good job here. What about daylight? Spacemaker runs a vertical sky component analysis that you probably already know. We have 3 outputs. Light green means that it will be very easy to achieve daylight compliance. Light blue means that it's risky, so we will need big windows and we need to be smart if we are to place any balconies. And dark blue just shows where we have the areas with the biggest risk, right? So these are really problematic areas that we want to minimize. And why is vertical sky component so important? Well, because I will show you later on how you can actually correlate it with daylight factor, which is a key criteria in order to get credits for BREEAM. So this is something we want to keep an eye on. And again, I would say that concept A and C are the ones with the best results in terms of daylight. However, all concepts actually struggle to create good daylight conditions on neighbor buildings. So the good news is that we are not only run all of these analyses in our own project, but we can also run them on selected surrounding buildings. So we can document exactly the impact of our designs on the surroundings, and we can use it as a base, as a foundation, as an argument with the planning authorities as well. And you know what? We actually need to do a better job here because the neighbor building, it's completely dark. So that's something to consider in our next iteration loop. What about noise? Spacemaker considers noise from traffic, so from cars as well as trains. And we can see here that all of them actually do a really good job, except for concept D that allows noise to be reflected in between the towers, as you can see here. That's interesting. What about views? Well, Spacemaker allows you to run a view analysis towards an area of interest. And right here, you can see there are 2 of them. The first one, it's the water, so the river chains, and the one represented in red is the Golden Hind. And we can see that concept B has 57% of the facade with a view to at least one area of interest. Why is this important? Well, because the more units that have a view towards the area of interest, the bigger will be also the revenue on the project. What else? We're also now looking at wind. I will keep it very short because there's a lot to be said about wind, but Spacemaker fetched the closest, the wind rows that you can see over here from the closest weather station. Then it runs a wind simulation for each direction. And at the end, it plots a comfort scale, which is a very comprehensive color map. As you can see, light greens means it's really good to be seating. So that's where you want to place restaurants and playgrounds. Yellow means that it's a bit uncomfortable. Red flags an opportunity for storms. So that's something, of course, we want to avoid, but within just a few seconds, we can see that concept A and C are the ones that create the most comfortable conditions. And since we have wind and we have sun and we have also a weather data, we can also run a microclimate analysis, which considers all of the aspects that I just told. And what I like about this one is just it gives us the opportunity to consider nature as a premise, as a driver of our design, right? Like even as architects, if we do a great job and our buildings look beautiful, let's just say, for example, in concept B, reality is that the expected temperature on the 21st of March here will be between -1 degree Celsius to 2 degrees. However, if we would do courtyard, we would have temperatures between 8 and 5 degrees. So huge delta, huge difference. And that's for sure something we want to consider when we will be choosing which concept we want to move forward with. And concept A so far looks the winner. B, a lot as, for example, really good view, but actually did a terrible job when it comes to the microclimate. Last analysis I want to show you, it's PV, so solar panel, the capacity for your project to produce energy. If we just look very quickly here, we see that concept A is by far the one that performs the best. It has the potential to produce 540,000 kilowatt hours per year, which is 100,000 more than concept C, which is the second best. So at this point, I'm not sure if you agree with me, but we have a really strong case that says that concept A, this approach of having an enclosed courtyard, is the one that will create the best outcomes. And that's what I'm looking for here, right? I'm just trying to understand which approach I want to go forth with. And now that we have concluded that, what I want to do is to enable the architect in me to take over the process, right? Right now, I want to make sure that I start going deep into that concept, that I consider also the challenges that we have seen. And one of those was the daylight conditions on the neighbor building. If you remember, that was not good enough, a lot of dark area there. We also want to make this street a bit wider. And that's where I start to worry a little bit about the shape, the form, the program. Right now, I still see that there is some dark blue area over here. So if we lower the south wing of our building, we see that it results in much better living conditions in terms of sun. I will also step up a bit my building to make it a bit more interesting from a shape point of view. And right now, I will work a little bit on the programming, right? My whole base will be commercial. I also will make sure that the units by the water will be offices. I will just adjust them a little bit, and notice I will just move back a little bit the video so that you understand every time I'm doing changes, I have always full overview of the areas. Just see over here, right? I know exactly how many square meters I have on my project and exactly the split up between the different programs. Right now, I'm looking at a rapid analysis for noise, and we see that the noise conditions did not change. And we also have wind. The difference between these and the ones that we just saw before is that these ones are based on surrogate models that run within like 1-2 seconds, and the other ones may take a bit longer. And now I want to show you something that I'm incredibly proud that we developed, and that's operational energy, which accounts for the energy to be used for HVAC, plug load, and lighting. And it's extremely simple to use. So the only thing you need to input will be the window to wall ratio. Let's make it, for example, 60%. The wall construction, roof construction, window construction. And the weather data is already there. Spacemaker did fetch that automatically. And again, within seconds, we can see that we will be spending between 74 and 112 kilowatt hours per square meter per year. So we have now a really good understanding of consumption as well as production, if you remember the PV one. So right now we have this mass that we are really that we are confident that performs very well. And what I want to do is to start creating a BIM model, and I will leverage Revit for that, right? The whole idea about leveraging different solutions that we can leverage the best ones for what they do best. And the cool thing is now that Spacemaker is integrated with Revit, so we can just send all information we have within I wouldn't say seconds, maybe minutes, because as you know, Revit is a desktop solution and it does require to download all of that information. But you will see that you will have a Spacemaker tab and you can just load the information. And the coolest thing, in my opinion, is that it's not like you just get all the information, but this information you get is actually native to Revit, right? It's kind of insane. So all the walls, slabs you are seeing here are Revit families. What you could do? Well, you could just, for example, apply the build-ups that you have developed in-house, right? And you start immediately enriching this BIM model, and you get immediately automatically levels, grid systems, rooms, everything is actually created automatically. And of course, you can tweak like exactly how you want to do these things. I will now jump a little bit over because this workflow just shows exactly how you can create plan layouts in Revit and then bring those plan layouts into Spacemaker. It can be a bit technical, but here is my my result. So I created two different alternatives, which then I exported as an IFC, and I brought them into Spacemaker by importing it. I did not mention this, but of course, this is something that we have done it. As Ed said, we created Spacemaker not under the Autodesk umbrella, right? So something that was important for our users from day one was to be able to integrate with any software, and especially the ones that are used at early stage, such as Rhino, SketchUp, Formit, and we do enable you to import solutions that you have designed in these different third parties into Spacemaker. And there are two ways that you can import that information. You can import it as a mesh, so you'll keep like the whole level of detail that you have on that model, or you can just simplify it. And by simplify it, you allow Spacemaker to understand exactly the volumes, the rooms, and that allows you to modify, to iterate that shape in Spacemaker as well. I will now jump a little bit over, but the whole idea is that you can still use these granular data to make better decisions, right? You have here two solutions that have exactly the same envelope, so the same volume, but a little bit different on the way they are organized in terms of distribution, of core, circulation. And we'll see that very quickly, the concept on the left-hand side as a lot more apartments that have a view towards the area of interest and therefore can generate bigger revenue for the real estate developer. Just jumping it a bit over, because what comes next? And that's where I think we can see the whole circle starting to close, right? I've just shown you a ton of information for early stage, but I mean, the goal here, the big vision, is to bridge that into very detailed and deep knowledge and requirements that we have. And I know that Priam is a big one for you, and we want to make sure that we help you achieving that from the first sketch. And that's where I will try to bridge the vertical sky component to daylight factor. First thing, we know that we don't have much time in early stage, right? So we can't just like develop the whole model and run a lighting simulation for each room. So what I will do is that I will choose some apartments, some units based on the vertical sky component, and I want them to be diverse. Some of them will be light green, some of them will be light blue, and some will be very dark. And then I will bring that model into Revit and I will model each apartment. And it doesn't need to be like super detailed, you know, it's all about getting the right width and the right depth, so that once I can start stress testing my model with different window configurations, I try to find which is of these allow me to achieve 2% daylight factor. Because that's the requirement for BREEAM when you have living rooms and kitchens together, and for 80% of the room. And you can see, for example, that over here we actually have passed, so we are above the threshold. And what we want to do is to end up with a table like this, where we clearly can correlate vertical sky component with a specific window configuration, and we know exactly how much average daylight factor we'll be achieving. And once we have that data, we can just go back into Revit and be very confident where to place and how we should place the different windows on the whole model. Although we have not modeled each room and run analysis for each one of those, right? But because we have this table, we are in a really good place to do that that task. And what you see here is already the BIM model with all the windows in place. And I will just pause over here, because if we will now jump into, if it would be to jump to Spacemaker, you'd see like this area over here where you see like a huge window to wall ratio is where we would see the dark blue vertical sky component, right? You basically need to make it just glass. Where you see a lot of wall, that's where you have the light green. So that's really important, right? Every time we are optimizing for daylight from day one, we're actually making a really good job in terms of embodied carbon, energy, because windows are often a place where we do lose some of the performance in terms of energy. What can you do as well? Well, because we have now a full BIM model with the right openings, build-ups, we can just send this into Insight Energy, and you can just run a new analysis there, and you try, and you can go like way more granular in order to understand how you can optimize consumption, right? You can do things like, well, window to wall ratio, you can change it, but you can study window shading, for example, towards south. What kind of solution can you use over there? Also, what kind of glazing should you use on each facade? Should it be one, single, double, triple glazed? You can go even in more depth and see wall construction, roof construction. Daylighting and occupancy controls, and what else? Well, one that will have a huge impact is for sure the HVAC. You can see here, like we are at 193. Just see, like by using a heat pump, we are now at 151. So we just saved 40 kilowatt hours per square meter per year. And we are now at only 105 for the total, for the whole project. So in terms of outcomes, what have we achieved, right? Let's just say that we have spent, I don't know, like 4 days in order to complete this workflow. Well, we have an extremely strong business case, right? We can assess construction costs, operating costs, revenue. We have a high-performing building that we know that is able to achieve high KPIs, such as BREEAM. And we have a 3D model that we can leverage to discuss the project with investors and the planning authorities, right? Everything at the early stage. And I really believe that this is this way of making insights and data available will change the way that we work in this industry. And in my opinion, that's also the best way for us to achieve all the ambitious results and goals that we have in terms of green transformation. And thank you so much. I will now turn off my screen, turn on my camera. Maybe we have some questions.
Yes, we do. Thank you, Daniel and Ed. Apologies, everyone, for any of the technical difficulties at the beginning. So We have a question in from Tom. I know you did mention it briefly, but it'd be nice to sort of capture this answer within this question. So, can I import an existing design into Spacemaker to see the analysis?
Yes. Short answer is yes. From any software, the only thing you need to make sure is that you are using the right formats, OBJ or IFC, and we have mapped very well how you can do it. Just come to Spacemaker and look for the tutorial.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I don't know if this is best to leave to later on, but there's a question in from Jack asking about whether you could demonstrate the shading demo again, as they didn't see the shadow projected onto the neighboring building very clearly, but that might be something that we just pause with and see if we have time for in due course. We've got a question in from Tom, which I'll extrapolate slightly. He's asked whether there's a flood risk analysis within Spacemaker. And I would tag on to that. Is there anything that you're able to discuss? Obviously, there may be things that you're currently developing that you'd like to surprise everyone with, but is there anything that you're able to discuss that you're looking into and looking to release soon, or areas where you feel like the generic areas that you feel like you might want to sort of focus Spacemaker to enhance it further?
This is a great question, right? Flooding is for sure one that we are considering, but it requires really good data that normally you need like to get from a survey or from a consultant. And that's the only reason why we have not integrated it yet. However, we are making huge efforts to integrate with more data vendors, and we hope that flooding makes it into the engine. As soon as we have the data, we'll be able to run these analyses, because we already know like all the geometry of the terrain, where the buildings are placed. And as you probably got a sense, Spacemaker put sustainability on top of the agenda, right? All these analyses we saw were about sustainability, and flooding is for sure one of those. And I can't promise you that that one is coming like just yet, but everything that is sustainability is on top of our minds right now. The one that we are working really hard on, and I think there is a prototype already working, it's embodied carbon.
Great, thank you for that, Daniel. I think we've got a question in from Gabija, and I think the premise of the question is you went through and explained how to design within Spacemaker. I think the question, apologies if I've got the wrong end of the stick, but from the question, the way the question's written, I feel like what they're trying to find out is is it quite interchangeable between Revit and Spacemaker? So, for example, is it best to start in Spacemaker, or is it better to start in Revit, or is it either or?
That's a great question as well. And I mean, the workflows is always up to the users, right? But as a proficient user, the way I like to do things is that I start every project in Spacemaker, because I just get that bounding box, that 3D world already like running. And if I want to design something in Revit, what I would do at that point, I would send the whole model into Revit. I would module my proposal, and I would bring that information back in IFC format into Spacemaker and then run all the analysis. If I want to do the modeling elsewhere, otherwise I would just stay in Spacemaker up to the point that I'm very comfortable and confident that the massing that I've achieved fulfills all the goals that I proposed to myself at the beginning of the process.
Great. We've got a question in from Roman. We've got, what drives the underlying data around topography, adjacent buildings, etc., and how accurate is this? And then additionally to that, is it, for example, more accurate in the Nordic region rather than the UK? So in essence, the scaling of your data accuracy, etc.
Sure. And that is a big one, right? Data quality does vary immensely from country to country. I would as far as say from region to region. And Spacemaker does not own any data. what we have done is to integrate with local data providers. And the accuracy of that data, it's on them. That's true that in the Nordics, information has a really, I mean, we do fetch really good data because it's for free. And these public authorities have made it very simple for us to integrate directly with them. The same is true, though, for the UK in terms of terrain. We are fetching terrain from DIFRA, right? In terms of buildings, right now, we only are fetching them from OpenStreetMap, which do not have a really good level of detail, but you can bring on your own data very simply. But my whole point is that just because you created the project once in Spacemaker, do not expect that will be the quality that you will find for every region, right? You will have a completely different experience. For example, if you do it, I don't know, for Scotland or in Germany. By the way, for Germany, it's really good data as well. So it really depends, and we are working very hard on our API to make sure that any data vendor can come to this platform and make their data available to our users within seconds. So that whole idea about going to the data provider, ordering that data, waiting maybe 2 days, pay a bill, and then get it, becomes more of the century. So we do want to make sure that you can just kick off a project very quickly and cut on that time.
Great. I think I'll just go with, let's just look at the time. I think I'll go with one or two more questions, then we'll have to bring it to an end. There are a number of other questions. What I would suggest is if Ed and Daniel, if you could share your email contact details into the chat box and people could get in contact with you directly. By the way, everybody, if you would like to find out more or have a demo or a trial of Spacemaker, then I'm sure Ed or Daniel can discuss that with you in further detail. Or if you have very site-specific queries, they'll be able to discuss that with you in further detail and take it from there. I hope that's okay to say, both Daniel and Ed. So we've got a question in from Bilal. He's basically asked, with regards to importing the information from Spacemaker into Revit, does it allow you to easily schedule and tabulate the information?
I'm not sure if I fully understood the whole question.
I think what he's referring to is, again, apologies if I'm missing the point of this below, but is within Revit, and I presume many other softwares, you have a report function, which is able to output areas, etc., and so on. I presume he's asking, does the information coming from Spacemaker to Revit, does it allow you to take advantage of that, or is there further amendments, etc., required before you're able to do that?
It does, right? Because all this information will be Revit native families. So just thinking, for example, about rooms, you can just get like a full schedule over all the areas in terms of walls or slabs. You can get like all the quantities. You just need to apply the appropriate build up.
Okay, great. And then I think I'll ask a question actually, because I don't think it's been asked, and I think it's important to pick it up. So many of the areas that you've touched on is obviously very specialist, and you tend to have specialist consultants who provide detailed reports on these items and detailed analysis. There's obviously, this is early stage design, but naturally at some point you're going to need the specialist to get involved and look at this in essence a high level of detail. How do you see that synergy there?
I like this question. Like, we want to disrupt the way we are working. However, we believe there is a place for everyone, right? All the consultants that are already helping us, we want to keep that synergy going, but we want to change the way it works. So like the status quo is for me to work, let's just say, for 1 or 2 years in a project and then send over an IFC to my consultant that will then run a noise analysis, which will create a huge PDF report with all the performance, the different performances and advices on like how to become compliant in certain areas that I'm not, and saying that I'm compliant in other areas, right? We believe this is the wrong way of working. The way we foresee the future is that We want to engage that consultants from day one. And what we want from them is the input. We want to know the speed limit, the amount of cars, the amount of heavy traffic that drives on that road, so that we can set in our software. And then we can run as many noise analyses as we want, or the necessary ones, for us to achieve a really good result. And once that work is done, we bring back the consultant so that they can verify that the results are now according to the standards, and so that we can submit our application for zoning or building permit. So it's a completely different way, much more collaborative and less about reporting. We want to see to look at these consultants as part of that conversation rather than someone one-off engagement, right? Coming, taking their fee, sending us their PDF, and being done. The more you iterate the project, the better it becomes.
Great.
I think I'd add there as well, Usman, sorry to interrupt there. I think we've had consultants look at what we actually output from Spacemaker, and they've ratified it as a great starting point. Remember, we're opening up the options at the earliest stage. We still need consultants to refine it, but it's a great baseline for them to start to work with.
Great. And I think a really interesting addition to the question which Bilal has picked up, which I think is really worth asking before we bring it to a close, is once you have access to Spacemaker, is it a collaborative environment? So, for example, let's say we have the access to it within our practices, but then obviously we have a design team, which may be 5 or 10 people. Are they able to come into this and sort of have a look and sort of see what we've pulled and pushed and etc., and then almost take that information and go, okay, I see where all of this is, rather than just the outputted report?
Yes. So that we do allow for collaboration in multiple ways. One is like the most basic, allow for users to be working on the same project at the same time. But we want to go a bit further in that. So we also allow you to, for example, to comment on each other's designs. And a third aspect is that we have developed our subscription in such a way that you can, for example, bring on people, stakeholders of the project, for example, just as viewers, so that they can see the work that you have done and they can comment on it, but they are not able to change it. And for example, that one does not require a commercial license. Viewers can actually come completely for free.
Okay, great. I think that's a really good juncture to bring it to a close. Again, I know I mentioned it earlier, but there are a number of questions which I haven't managed to get to, so apologies for that. If you do have any pressing questions or have any projects that you'd like to discuss with Daniel or Ed specifically, they can either help, or they obviously can pass you on to their respective colleagues and discuss that in further detail with you. So they have shared their email addresses within the chat box, and I'm sure that there'll be a email that follows this for everyone that attended, which should hopefully have their contact details as well. So please do get in touch with them directly if needed. And I look forward to seeing you all in 2023. Have a lovely winter break. Thank you so much, Daniel. Thank you so much, Ed, for being our last talk for the year. It's truly great to see how technology is coming in to help and assist in spatial design and concept design and all of this real amazing information that we're able to sort of glean from it, and it seems like it's a very exciting time moving forward. So thank you for bringing us the shining light for December.
Thank you, Usman. I'd say perhaps if you ever see PD on presenter sharing in Microsoft Teams, do invite me to that.
No problem. I'm sure everyone's become accustomed to having issues on Teams, Zoom, etc., and so on. So I'm sure everyone was completely aware of the potential for things like that to happen. So honestly, no issues whatsoever. Thank you honestly for coming along and sharing all this really interesting information.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.